Entrepreneurs have ideas a mile a minute. They think, and I remember I was working in China probably 5 or 6 years ago, and I had a CEO who had great ideas, very poor execution. Couldn't quite translate those ideas into effective operating models for the business. And I remember sitting with him one day saying, an idea, no matter how good, is not a business. A business is the implementation of ideas into an operating model and marrying sales opportunities around that and effectively executing against those opportunities. And so what I try to tell an entrepreneur is, you can only do so many things, and you only have so many resources available at your disposal. Good reporting focuses the entrepreneur on the most effective throttles within their business. And so what I try to do for entrepreneurs is build them a framework within which we can discuss the business that keeps them focused. I operate on a principle of minimum worst outcome. So what I say to that entrepreneur is, let's look at where we are today. Let's understand whether or not we have inherent or internal surpluses that we can apply towards that idea. And if the answer is yes, then we model out what's the maximum that we can expose the business to this idea. In other words, you're giving them play around money. You can risk this amount without adversely impacting the business from a longer term perspective. And it's really important that as the financial person, you understand that about the business that you're advising, that you understand, yep, you've probably got a little bit of excess resources. We've modeled out your cash flow. You can divert this amount of money to that idea. If that idea requires more, then you got to work with the entrepreneur to figure out how we're going to pay for it. But you really ought to advise that entrepreneur about where the risk point is. I've seen entrepreneurs who bet the farm every time. The bigger the business, the greater the risk when they take those challenges. If it's a small business, they can rebuild. If it's a big business, it's really hard to rebuild, and you're affecting a whole lot of lives. And so you got to be very careful about making decisions that bet the farm, because you got a staff that you got to think about. You've got stakeholders and legal obligations you got to think about. Finance's job is to make the entrepreneur aware of what they're putting up when they're making those decisions, and then let them be entrepreneurs. My first job is to make sure that they trust me. How do I gain that trust? I gain that trust by repurposing or reshaping the way that they look at their business from a financial perspective, and then rinse and repeat. So by creating the habit of looking at financial information on a regular basis that's prepared in a useful way that focuses on cause and effect, it's amazing how 6 months in or 8 months in, that entrepreneur can at least pause, because they've had enough visibility of those drivers that when you bring up this conversation that might otherwise have had fallen on deaf ears, because you don't understand, you're just a finance guy. You always say no, or yeah, please. You don't think like we do. We know what the opportunity is. That habit of looking at KPIs in the context of the business that you're evaluating with the entrepreneurs and decision makers of that business is so fundamental to having them pause and walk with you as you take them down the scenario building of what the steps that they want to take are likely to lead to. And when you have that and you've already got that routine, you're halfway there. You're not always going to win, but you're halfway there.